Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to keep talking about my ongoing project of coding the combat system for a viewer's game. In particular, we've had to rewrite how the attacks work because I coded it up with the assumption that each monster would have one single attack, but then after talking to the viewer I found that actually what he wanted was that the monsters had access to several attacks, and some of those attacks could be used by more than one monster. So we needed to set up a separate array for attacks and then make sure that the that array could sort of talk to existing arrays. So what I'm going to do in this video is check that the new system is working, and then we'll look at the code. So as you can see, I've set up a combat here. We have no companions. We have a player character. We've rolled everyone's initiative. There's 14 enemies in this particular case. And the moving part of it, we've already seen, and the choosing the attack part of it we've already seen. So nothing's going to be new until we get a bit closer. So I'll just click through all that. Just have the player character advance, and here we go. So enemy 7 chooses the attack Buzz, and enemy 7 attacks player character. Well, let's check that. Enemy 7 is at distance 3. So in other words, they're 3 range bands away from the player character. That is right. That's within range. And now let's look at the roll and make sure the numbers are right. Enemy 7 rolls a 1 and 3, plus their sneaky score of 1. Well, these enemies are all male, so that's true. He does have a sneaky score of 1. Minus the target's sneaky score of 3. Well, we can see here that the sneaky is high, which is correct. Poor is 0, low is 1, moderate is 2, and high is 3. So the numbers that it's extracting are right. Let's see if it's adding it up properly. 1 and 3 is 4, plus 1 is 5, minus 3 is 2. So yes, it's seems to be adding everything up properly, and the result is what it should be, a long failure. That is what this game calls a bad failure, a particularly bad failure, the same thing that would be called a critical miss or a critical failure in other games. And as it says here, the enemy injures themselves, which is the penalty that you get for a long failure. So it all seems to be doing what it should be doing. Let's spend the rest of the video having a look at the code. So I don't think there's any new attributes that I need to tell you about. So we don't need to look at, I mean, we'll be using a lot of things from the initialize page, but I'm pretty sure that I've shown you everything, told you about how it works. But I will go back to it if we need to. All right, so the relevant code is all in this passage here, enemy strikes. You might remember that I had I'd stored the old code here, and I was going to sort of modify it and then delete this passage where I'd stored the old code. Well, I've done that because the code's not there anymore. So let's have a look at what happens here. I'll just zoom in. So first of all, we give a message that says which enemy is attacking which person on the player character's side. So which enemy is stored in INI_WHO. So initiative stands for, INI stands for initiative, and who just means who. Who is attacking, and then Z is the target. So If Z is 0, that means the player character, and if it's a positive number, which is the only other possibility, it means companion number Z. And I've just got a note to myself that says that Y is the attack that we're using this round. So we roll 2 6-sided dice, or we simulate doing that, and that's just random bracket 1, 6 end bracket. Store that in WX. Now here we have a pretty complicated bit of code, but I'll go through it. There's basically 2 different things that are happening here. So first of all, we have attacks Y1. Well, Y is the attack that we're using this round. Attacks something 1 is the attribute that is added to the attack roll. So in this case, or in the case of Buzz, it would be attribute 3. And in the case of the other 3, it would be attribute 1. And then if we look at att_name, we can see that 3 is sneaky and 1 is strong. These are sort of close range attacks, and so the strong attribute of the monster is relevant, and Buzz is a ranged attack, and so it uses sneaky. It seems like it'll usually be strong and sneaky. Smart and sexy don't seem to don't seem to be used for this particular use. I suppose you could have sexy could be used if you had maybe like a siren or something, and that was like a hypnotic attack. Maybe that would use sexy, but in this particular scenario where we're talking about giant mosquitoes that are just sort of doing normal physical type attacks, it's not going to be used. So getting back to here, so we find what attack are we using, and then we have enemy_att enemy_typ, and then that attack. So what does that mean? Well, enemy_att, I picked a slightly bad abbreviation because att stands for attributes, but now we're storing attacks as well, so it's a bit confusing, so I might change that at some stage, but enemy_att is meant to be enemy attributes. Enemy_typ is the type of the enemy that is currently attacking, because enemy att stores things for each type of monster. So we look at the type, and then we look at whatever attribute is used in this particular attack. So let's have a look at enemy_att. So it will be, let's say it's a male attacking, and let's say it's an attack that uses attribute number 1. It'll look in there and say, that's a value of 1. Or if it's a female, that's a value of 2. Or if it's attribute 3 and a male attacking, it will say, that's slot 3, because remember the first slot here is slot 0. That's slot 3, so that's a value of 1. Or for a pupa or a female, it would be a value of 2. So we have some sort of number, which is the addition to the 2d6 roll. And then we need to get the target's sneaky score. So if Z equals 0, which means we're attacking the player character, we go att_per, that's attribute by persona. Persona is basically sort of character class or character type. $per is the persona that the player character has chosen, or the player has chosen for their player character. And 3 is where the sneaky score is stored. If it's a companion, that's exactly the same, except instead of PER, we use COM Z1. Z because it's the number of the companion, and 1 because that's where we store the persona of that particular companion. Then we put that all together. We said x2 equals W plus X, that's the 2 D6 rolls, plus Z2, that's the the bonus to the attack, minus Y2. That's the penalty to the attack. And then we print all that out so that we can check it. And we may end up printing this out in the final game as well. I'm not sure what the viewer wants yet, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. So it just says enemy. It'll say something like enemy 2 rolls, let's say 4 and 6, plus their... Now we have the ATT underscore name. That is the names of the different attributes. So this will give you either sneaky or strong, or if we had an attack that involved sexy or smart, it would say that. So it'll be something like enemy 3 rolls 4 and 6, plus their sneaky score of Z2 of 2 or whatever it is, minus target's sneaky score of whatever that is, for a total of X2. And then, once we've got that final total, we need to have branching based on what those numbers mean. If it's a 2 or 3, well, actually, it can be less than. If it's 3 or less, sorry, sometimes you will get less than 2 because of penalties. If it's less than 4, in other words, 3 or less, that's a long failure. If it's a 4, 5, or 6, that's a failure. If it's a 7, 8, or 9, that's a success. And if it's a 10 or more, it's a long success. So that's the equivalent, the sort of opposite of a long failure. It's a critical hit, basically. It's going to have an extra effect. For the monsters, it should knock the... it might knock the target prone if that's not what the attack does. As well as doing damage. But we'll get to that in the next video because, as you can see, of course, at the moment it just tells you what category it's in. Well, the next thing we have to code is the consequences of that. So for a long failure, we have to do damage to the attacker. For a failure, nothing will happen. For a success, we'll do damage to the target. And then with a long success, well, we'll do damage to the target except in the particular case of an attack that knocks them prone. And then with a long success, they'll do sort of extra damage to the target. So that's what we'll be doing in videos to come. But for now, I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you. And I hope you will tune in next time.